Is the vampires and legends of folklore and fictional middle. So if that's not what you come to see, I'm sorry, that's there, but we'll stick. I'm gonna have the panelists introduce themselves and do some general housekeeping, and then yeah,
We're having trouble hearing you over here.
okay.
Use your teacher voice.
Hello.
That's better.
Good morning, DragonCon.
Morning.
That was excellent. My name is Olson. I used to teach too briefly, and whenever my students would call me Miss Olson, I'd be like, Miss Olson, my dog. So I am the author of 10, 9, 12 fantasy novels, you big eyes, for both 47 North and 4. This is my third DragonCon. I'm so excited to be here. And I do have some bookmarks and ribbons in the back. My ribbons say my books have light and they have a little vampire book. Here after or else they're back there. Thanks for having me.
I'm Dan Lewis, adjacent to Chairman, stands for something else. And I write the Wood City series and the Rushford trilogy, and I'm a little frazzled because right before this panel, I was trying to get the new novella ready to go up for sale. So that's been there sometime now.
Congratulations on the new release. I'm EJ Stevens. I write the Ivy Bangers and Detective series, the Hunter's Guild series, the Spirit Guide series, and my upcoming series is the Whitechapel Paranormal Society series.
My name is Dacre, Stoker. I'm lucky to be born into a family with a cool name. Capitalize on it. I actually have co-authored a couple of books. I'm smart enough to find really good authors to work with. The latest one is coming out October 2nd. You can hear about it if you come to the panel tonight, 8:30, and also tomorrow night, 8:30 in Hard Track, and there'll be some giveaways. Very, very happy to be at my second one, and also it's great to be up here with so many speed writers and look forward to this panel.
My name is Clay Griffith. I'm half of the Clay and Susan Griffith writing team. We're the authors of Vampire Empire series, which has vampires. We're the author of Crown and Key, which does not have vampires. And we're the author of The Flash and Arrow, which does not have vampires.
My name is Declan. If anyone has trouble hearing me, just shout. I'm the author of 15 different books. Don't ask me to name them all. I'm not sure I can keep track of them without a flowchart. My primary series that I'm known for right now is the Love at First Bite podcast. Two of the 4 were nominated for Dragon Awards in the first two Dragon Awards. I'm also the author of the Panelists trilogy, and hold on. There are 5 books in the Panelists trilogy, long story. So all 9 of those books that I just mentioned are from my publisher, Silver Empire Press, and I won't go into the other 6 because it's going to be a long story.
I'm Erica Jamaica Trott. I am the second in command of the Urban Fantasy Track, so Carol's left-hand woman. Currently writing my first book, but I'm also writing my PhD thesis, so
Wow. Good luck.
Thank you. I need it. So your first job is to make sure that as you have fall on the stage, I can change your student program to I've almost done that book. Secondly, we do have our shows over here that you can vote for, like your favorite, or our there's the action charity this year. So Buffy is your favorite show. You can donate to that and or whatever you want to vote for. We're going to do some giveaways. Do any of you have giveaways that you want to do other than what I already know? I actually put about 30 copies of this at the back of the room, so when people are going at the end, these are those and all kinds of stuff. It's just I actually have to know the thing right after. Okay, yeah.
Actually, you can wait now. So, my first question is, what fiction or lore do you use in your writing? The basic generic one-on-one question.
Well, I write a lot of vampires, but I also write a lot of fairy folklore. So if you've ever read Fairies in the Third Tradition from Catherine Briggs, it covers a lot of Celtic folklore, and I actually incorporated some of the vampiric fae and actually added more to the vampire side of that, such as Banshee. It's a fairy who artists will kind of sell their soul to her. They must love and adore her, but and they will be creative geniuses for a very short time, but they die very young and she draws their life essence from it, which is very similar to the vampire.
In this book, this is the one that's about to come out. It's a prequel to Dracula. I've actually done a ton of research on this thing. And I'm sort of pigeonholed into Bram Stoker's life. So I've actually researched stories that Bram was exposed to as a young boy. And that's sort of the premise to this prequel to Dracula. What went into Bram's head when he wrote Dracula? So I actually found a few references within the family, some are oral, of stories that Bram was aware of and was told by his mom. And one is, and just by raising that, anybody know that there are actually Irish vampire stories? It's not all fairies, or at least not the fairies that use the Walt Disney World, but a vampire called Dacre. And so that plays out big time in his novels. So we take the real folklore that he's exposed to and insert that in his fictional world.
I guess the vampire folklore that we use most of all was Dracula, because he codified what we as Westerners think about vampires now, because it was transmitted into film and popular culture. So, in our Vampire Empire series, we took that as our starting point, which is these are the mythologies of the vampire. Our vampires are not dead creatures, they're a parasitic species that has co-evolved with humans, so we then had to look at all the mythology and say what would be a biological reason why this myth would have come about. Why do they think they're afraid of rain, or why are they afraid of running water, et cetera, et cetera. And we came up with a biological creature whose actions explain that mythology. So that was how we came up.
I tried to build a lot of my own lore around original Dracula, where it's my first thought was, okay, I want crosses, I want holy water. I use communion wafers and suicide pills for vampires. I even threw throwing stars of David just to be funny. And then I decided, okay, well, how does this make sense? Okay, fine. You look at some history. Vlad Tepes was not a nice guy, if you look at it from one point of view. Although locally I'm told he is the local hero in Transylvania, so either way. So, okay, I took Catholic philosophy, mostly Thomas Aquinas, and, well, I did a lot of fun stuff with it, and I refer to it as an imperfect resurrection. So, yes, so the soul and the body are closer together. So the vampire has perfect control over the body, and the more actions they commit one way or the other, good or for evil, dark side or light, if you want to be Jedi about it, the more powerful they become. And I have a good vampire as a main character, and her only comment on it is, I go to confession a lot, and it hurts. That's the short version. Long version, but what?
When I started writing vampires, and shortly after, when I was in grad school, I did a lot of research into the theory of the universal vampire, which, if you don't already know, it's the idea that all around the world, during the Renaissance and a little bit before and after, there were cultures that came up with an idea of a vampire-like creature. Now, these countries were in different countries, and they had no way to communicate with each other. But they all kind of had these same fears about, what happens to your body after death? What happens to your soul after death? Can people come back from the dead? And as one does, they came up with the Signs of the Day, which was a story about, a creature that would rise from the dead and be very parasitic and all that. So I looked a lot at this universal vampire theory and how it was kind of built on very universal fears. And I kind of went to, well, what are our fears today? And I think that vampires, because they function so well, is such an interesting metaphor. I kind of made my vampires very disconnected. They have been removed from time and from society in their own way. And so for me, mine kind of represent this sort of disconnection and removal, and I think that's often, really an arrogance in vampire fiction, but I also was very, very interested in what actually happens to you if you have no connections with the world that's moving quickly during the daylight. So I don't think that answered the question. I think I just talked for a while. But I'm done now, so I'm going to present it that way.
While I don't shy away from blood and gore and to a certain extent romance, I tend to play things the more humorous side. Maybe that's because I like Buffy so much. So sometimes the folklore I'll be pulling on with a pen going how I can use it. For example, in one of the books, there's a Dukube, which is the Japanese vampires or Asian vampires whose heads pop off and fly around. Here's an example. If that's the kind of vampire you are, don't throw down in a bowling alley. At least not with my main character, because you're going to get bowled with. And it's hard if you're ahead to make it all the way through the ball return. And so in the new novella, we're also going into the Greek or it's truly there's a whole area of vampire lore where, from a modern perspective, it's hard to discern whether the creature that they're talking about is vampire, or a werewolf, or both, or a night hag. And so we wind up with a vampire who can feed by multiple ways. The name of the novella is Knock, but only one knock, because even a knock-knock joke, Brachylocus would only tell with one knock, because that's one of the methods they can feed. They knock on your door. If you answer it, they can just walk off because they got you. And you die slowly over time as they feed off of you, unless they let you go, or unless you kill them. So a much more interesting way of feeding, other fun ways, was they can meet you on the side of the road and just beat the hell out of you. Sneak into your room, sit on your chest, and steal your breath. Very fun ways to feed there. They can drink blood, but if they do, they become a bloated, tick-like, horrible corpse-looking thing. So they run. But my favorite thing about them was working, and I guess it's because of the Greek Orthodox thing, or maybe it's not, just poorly informed, which is possible. They can't go out on Saturday nights. Everybody's got to stay home. Everybody's safe on Saturday. You can go to church sometime.
Let me just add one more quick thing. As I hear this, you all got to remember that, you mentioned earlier about where these things all started. This was sort of good propaganda back in the medieval days, warnings to people like, you better not do bad things, otherwise either vampires are going to get you or you're going to turn into one. This is sort of like our boogeyman. So this was like real stuff that then kind of got all convoluted because they weren't lucky like us to have the written word to spread the truth. But they had these even oral ways, around the village, the campfire, the village got together, or the priest giving a sermon in the town. This was a way to say, you got to mourn the passing of somebody properly, and you have to behave and do all your family chores, and not go on Saturday night because Sunday morning we need to go to church, or we need to clean the house, or we need to do the work out in the fields. So the vampire was a really effective form of deterrence. It was people many years later that had a whole lot of fun with it, but we still go back to all that. Maybe they're real. That's what makes them most
you know, there are areas of Europe today where they still will not answer the door if you move. You might be quiet and see if that person knocks again. Oh, okay, we're good.
Well, as recently as 2003, there was a group of 6 men in Romania that they killed the grave of a relative and very graphically, very violently tore his heart down his chest. Then they burned and charred the heart over an open fire, and then mixed the ash of that heart in with water, and the village drank it because they believed that he had become a vampire and was wandering around and sickening all the villagers. So I think when you get back again to the spread of information, and there are still very isolated parts of the world where they don't have that same access to information, and the superstitions are their reality. They don't think of it in the terms of this is fantasy, this is fiction, this is a thing to have lots of laughs at. They felt this was an actual, very dire threat to their safety.
So, I'm sorry, I gotta do this again.
I need to ask my next question.
No, Does anybody seen the series Legend Hunter with Chastain? Okay, it's a travel channel that.
Yes, actually, I've seen that.
Yeah, so we discussed this very thing in Boston Harbor filming the segments that came out. Now, Pat is a biologist, okay, you may hear like this one. So he looked at that very same situation he was talking about. Burning of a heart at the crossroads, getting this diseased heart, because obviously this was the plague, it wasn't really the guy doing it. So you got a heart that's affected biologically. They burn it, and then they put it into a potion and give it to the people that's being bent, and then she gets better. Pat's looking into this very same thing that happened in New England that Bram knew about, okay? All the tuberculosis stuff. Is it possible that this was like the beginning of some form of inoculation? Is it possible that something in that charred up heart is making the body build up antibodies against TB, which then got interpreted as, oh, they were warring off the vampire. And at the same time, anybody who, and let's say it's EJ who's getting, the family that's getting bent, what does the rest of the community do? Oh, they kind of put her in this quarantine, get away from her, we don't want to catch it. So in a way, all these superstitions of folklore have their basis in truth and maybe even science. We just have to really look at it and analyze it, but maybe that's what's going on. And then it gets interpreted another way.
Based off of what you all have been saying, what does the vampire archetype mean to you? Or represent?
Something to be a story
So obviously, it's based in superstition. People do believe that, these are things that will get people so to make you good and not get you basically. But in your mind, why do you write about vampires? What's the archetypal symbolism?
I don't think I understood this when I started writing, but some of you may know Margot Adler, who wrote a book called Drawing Down the Moon about witchcraft. After her husband died, she became very interested in vampires and wrote a short, which was published shortly before she died, not about vampires, but about the history of why we're interested in vampires. And her idea was that over time, vampires represent different things to popular culture. In the era of Dracula, they may have represented fear of the foreigner, fear of sexual liberation. Her theory, and once she told me, I realized that's what I was doing, is that contemporary vampires most often represent a fear of misuse of power. That we fear the execution of power in our lives. Vampires in fiction have become extraordinarily powerful. And that's certainly in our series, which is about vampires conquering the northern hemisphere and destroying the industrial world. That's what it's about. They then live off the ruins of the old human world and keep humans as herds while they do nothing except sit around and let humans dress them and open doors for them. So I think vampires have represented different things to different people over time, but I think in many ways what it represents most to us is, because sexual liberation is by and large moved on, but it's a fear of misuse of power, and that's what we're interested in
I think that's a really, really great way to put it. I think for me, I actually never wanted to write about vampires. I still don't really want to write about vampires. I sometimes have people ask me if I believe I'm a vampire, which is all kind of sort of very strange to me because I come at it from this idea of vampires as being a very interesting and very flexible metaphor. Like they take a certain amount of crap for writing vampire fiction because, thanks Twilight. Now I can't talk to anyone at Thanksgiving. Thanks a lot, Twilight. But I do think that it represents different things at different times, as you were saying. And I think class warfare is one of the things that is working really well for me right now as a writer, because wealth isn't really a problem for many vampires. I mean, boy, you can play that stock market for a long time. And if you have mind control, you can walk up to anybody and they will give you money and not even remember it. So you tend to have a lot of wealth, a lot of idle time, because you don't need a job, and sort of no foothold in the really fast-moving modern world. And I think that has kind of come to represent in a lot of fiction, this sort of idea of the idle rich. So I would definitely agree with what Clay said, and I think for me, that's why I write vampire fiction, is because it is so flexible as an idea and as a statement that we make.
I love the flexibility because I'm thinking about it sitting there over the course of 18 books. My vampires are very different from one book to the next. And the original example I gave of the linen sheet, I think at the time it was my own fear of bad contracts. That will suck the life out of me. And then at other times it was the figure lurking in the shadow that could steal my free will. Other times it was a more insectile, alien thing that could scuttle along the ceiling, that its movements and everything was so alien to me. I'm afraid of spiders, so there's no real surprise there that it would find its way in. But I think in a very personal way, as a writer, I tapped into my fear at that time when I was writing that thing. And so vampires for me really do represent those very primal fears.
Jim, you want to go first? Because I said a lot last time.
I feel so lowbrow though, because they're all these wonderful. Okay, for example, for me it was when I started writing The State. There was such a shiny, happy vampire, or vampire as I'm this beautiful person who is wrecked by ennui, even though when you look at the details, it's like, all right, so you can't go out there in the sun, but really it seems to me like your eternity is all about sex and being perfect, and your fights with your maybe boyfriend. I don't know. I think it's like, if Louis and Lestat would just do it, then maybe. But so I thought, well, I don't know. Let's take being a vampire away from being this bloodline thing. Let's make it more personal, and let's also have being a vampire be uncomfortable. You have to be a monster. So that's why and to have somebody not have been around forever. So that's why the main vampire in the State, he is from a previous generation. He's a World War II vet. He didn't want to be a vampire. He is one. He's not going to whine about it. And unfortunately, he, like the other vampires, who, you put your blood on the stove and you heat it up, and animal blood works, and well, good for you. No, I can't drink refrigerated blood. I throw it back up. And every now and then, usually once or twice a week, I wake up so hungry that I must kill someone. So, I've only been a vampire a few decades, but I've killed more people than Manson. And I'm a monster, but guess what? I still want to be alive, so sorry. I'm not going to be apologetic, because again, I didn't do this to me, but I do understand that I'm a complete monster, so oh well. And to me, that was very different than the whole, oh, woe is me. He's like, no, what are you going to do? Well, I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a strip club. And I'm going to make these girls a really great deal and pay for their health care, and you can only work for me a certain number of years, and you give blood to me based on the suggested schedule from the Red Cross so that I kill as few people as possible. And it's by the fourth book where he realizes, though many people think of him as a misogynist, half the women's department at the local college were put through school by him, and they all like him because he was not a seedy guy. Or as happened at my first panel, I had people walk up and go, thanks for being kind to sex workers. I was like, was I? The strip club was much nicer than reality.
Yeah, when I got into writing vampires, my first thought was, again, take the original Dracula lore, and stuff around it, and then let it loose and see what happens. I'm a historian, so, okay, so we're going to take a vampire from the Russian Civil War, put her through World War II and the Cold War, let's have this vampire join the CIA. The other one worked in World War II, guarding the Normandy invasion secret, here and there. And after a while, in terms of what it means, look, I have two catchphrases for the series. The first is, welcome to New York City, where vampires do not sparkle, they burn. Thank you, Twilight. Other one is, for my main characters, one is a heartless, bloodthirsty killer, the other is a vampire. Because I wanted to explore, this is how dark people can get. This is how good people can get. And let's have supernatural elements push the boundaries a bit and see just how far or how dark a human being can go and give them, as I put it, the vampire virus, which is a metaphysical microbe that eats blood trays, and just go with it from there. Is that low ground?
I'll keep this one brief, I promise. So, sitting here with 5 other writers who just told you, what's in their mind when they write. My focus, my interest is what was in Bram Stoker's mind when he wrote his. We didn't have the pleasure of having a panel with him. There was only one interview ever written when Bram was alive about Dracula. There was no autobiography, there had been biography and so on. So my quest is to figure out what was in that guy's head. It wasn't the first vampire story ever written, there was 3 before him. But so he was early on and they had gone through all sorts of metamorphosis and really cool shape-shifting and changes as these guys have told you. So what is it? And I believe there was some personal experience that happened in his life, some stories that he was told, as well as a lot of research into these medieval vampires and these truths. So if you want to hear more tomorrow night at 8:30, I go into great detail of what I found and put in the prequel about the Bram Stoker writing novel. What a tease.
So we've already gone over this a little bit, but what are some overlooked or undervalued myths or books on vampires that you recommend? Like non-fictional resources for books or actual other fantasy books that unless that's too hard, you'll
I'll say right now, David Wellington. Anybody read David Wellington? Okay, so that classifies as anybody here? He's done a really cool series. Look him up. I got to know David. It's contemporary stuff, New York based. 99 Coffins.
Yeah.
And there's another one that goes with it. But that's, to me, and unfortunately, he sort of moved on from that a little bit, another horror. But check him out.
I really like, I'm not a Game of Thrones person, but George Martin has a vampire novel, Fever Dream, which, Fever Dream love. Which is, by the way, if you look it up, it's F-E-V-R-E, Dream, it's the old-timey spelling, which is about vampires, around the time of the Civil War, riding riverboats up and down the Mississippi. And if riverboats up and down the Mississippi sounds boring to you, it did me too. But it's actually a fascinating book, and I'm a big fan of how he kind of reimagines this obviously very, very old myth and puts it and sets it as a huge part of American history.
I would recommend actually all comics in the 70s did a series called Tomb of Dracula. That Mark Wolfman wrote, that's his real name, Mark Wolfman. And Gene Colan illustrated with Tom Palmer. And they did the entire, well, except for a few issues at the beginning where they're finding their way. But once Wolfman came on, got issue 5 or 6, there's 70 issues of this thing. It's like a huge anime where you have these little single issue gems that are fantastic story bits and then larger story arcs. It's a beautiful, it's beautiful work. You ought to check it out.
I don't know if you could find them anymore, but Fred Saberhagen, a few decades ago, did an entire series on Dracula. And if you have to read one book, find the Holmes Dracula file. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula, or maybe it's Holmes Dracula team up, but that depends on how you read the book. And the other one is called The Dracula Tape, where it's the entire plot of Dracula by Stoker, right by Graham, only from Dracula's point of view.
It's good.
I've always loved the tie between vampires and necromancy and blood magic. And I really like the way that that's handled in the Kate Daniels urban fantasy series. The world building in that series is phenomenal. I love that, speaking of vampires, is that you have these necromancers who are the masters of the dead. And they use their minds and their necromancy magic to pilot these very vicious vampires to do their bidding. And that really fits in with how scary I think vampires are, how alien I think they are, and that tie in with the necromancy magic. It's really, really well done.
Oh, one thing, I almost forgot about it. David Weber, Out of the Darkness, I think it's a comedy, because it basically turns out to be aliens come to Earth. Aliens have basically won, but humans just won't roll over and play dead. And then the aliens try to invade Transylvania, and there is something in the dark. And he's hungry. And so I think it's a comedy. I might be wrong, but it was quite enjoyable.
So, answer I should. Les Klinger's annotated Dracula. If you haven't read it, read it like this weekend. Go order it now. It's amazing. The presumption is that any errors in the text are purposeful, and that Dracula is real, and that some of those edits are Mina protecting her husband's reputation, and some are Dracula's direct influence protecting the location of his castle and his own secrets. But also the 3 vampires that were pre-Dracula, Barney Piece of Blood is really great, Carnilla, Lord Ruthven. But the answer I'm really going to get, I can't remember which Uncanny X-Men annual it is, but I really tell you, when the X-Men fight Dracula, there is this marvelous moment where Wolverine realizes he's really, really fighting a vampire, and he pops one claw and tries to make a cross. And Dracula's like, yeah, no, little man, you have to believe. And Nightcrawler picks up 2 sticks and goes, oh, well, back. And then suddenly
Read Declan's pen, play Griffith.
Alright, so what vampire-related tropes are you tired of
Angsty vampires, sparkly vampires.
It's about dead though at this point, right?
You know,
More like Monday.
I think every like joking conversation on Twitter eventually ends in someone making a joke about sparkling vampires, and it's so tired. I definitely would agree with the idea that vampires really do nothing but sit around and sort of like pine for someone. or for each other, or for that one blood meal that got away, you know, that they have nothing to do with their time, and that they don't really want anything. I think sort of useless vampires would be what I'm most tired of. Like, if you're going to live forever, you're going to need to find a goal, people. Like, figure out something you want. Otherwise, you know, just the kind of listless loafing around on furniture with like lacy sleeves coming out of your jacket just doesn't do it for me, I guess.
I guess on a more serious note, it comes with any magic system, but I'd rather not see the trope of disability being a kind of disability erasure where magic or being bitten by a vampire just cures everyone.
Back to being less serious, we consider how vampires have evolved to go from out of the grave, like zombies that when Bram started, they were really ugly, hairy moms, etc., to Vampire Diaries, like the hottest girls and guys as possible to be in this little town. You know, I'm kind of, how could they evolve to get better looking than that? So it's like, okay, maybe we should just stop that, because we can't get much hotter than that. They need to go back to being sort of normal looking, historical, and ugly people, but then of course, then they clash with zombies who really are what vampires look like at the beginning. So to me, it's just, appearance-wise, let's just sort of stop trying to make them evolve and get better looking.
Oh, I always thought that was like a predator thing, like they evolved to draw in their prey, like with their hotness.
The glamour, and in actuality, all the fleshy parts, they're already gone. They have the anti-eye sockets, and actually the elongated teeth are because of that. That's pretty
Yeah, Jim Butcher has been like that too.
Yeah, way more vampires. Although I hear Albanian vampires are also supposed to be incredibly sexy for whatever reason. But no, I'm tired of vampires that they start with Dracula, then they take out stuff and say, okay, I'm done. Where it's, okay, we're going to have a vampire. Are they allergic to horses? No. Are they allergic to holy water? No. Are they allergic to silver? Depends on who you ask. And it's like, okay, that's why I hate the Blade movies. Sorry. But it's not that Wesley Snipes can't act. But, so I like it when people create their own lore. You know, Carolyn Kenyon made it into mythology. Tim Harrison made it into an entire alternate history. Hey, Jim Butcher and I lost count of how many court of vampires he's got. But, you know, I like when they do something original with it. I'm tired of just, okay, we're going to take Dracula and secularize it. Huh? Also, I'm trying to figure out what the point is of, we're going to have a vampire disco, and then we're going to have blood coming out of fire extinguishers up in the ceiling. It's like, isn't that a waste of blood? You want to be eating it, not bathing in it?
Why can't you do both?
Brave man.
I don't know what rave you did. I like our rave. Colorful.
Grady's the favorite color. Anybody else?
Go play.
I got no.
He was just gonna vamp for a while.
So I think a few years ago, before I started writing in my vampire world again, I would have had a very different answer. But to be honest, I think the only thing I'm really tired of, you can use exactly Dracula's rules. You can use Marty, you can use whatever rules you want. And as long as your plot is interesting and your characters feel real and your writing is entertaining, then it's fine. So I guess you can even have the most unoriginal approach. But if it's well written, your plot is interesting and your characters are cool. And so I guess what I would say, the people who aren't putting, how do I put it, sufficient effort into making their books feel real, making their characters feel real, and really entertaining their reader. That's the stuff that annoys me. When you read it, you're like, this was telegraphed in. What the? That's what I'm tired of. And to be honest, fortunately, there is a lot of vampire fiction now to not be annoyed by, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree that there's no particular trope that I wish would go away because if I'm reading it and I don't like it, I just move on. Someone else will like it. That's the cool thing about vampires is they are, as someone was mentioned earlier, they are so variable. You can do so many things with them, from romantic lead to vile zombie-like creature, and we, as readers or as consumers, still sort of generally understand that they are the same. There's some point along the same continuum. It's really cool. The one thing I do miss, though, I miss capes. I grew up in an era where if you wore a black cape, you were a vampire. That's now in a movie or a book, they signaled the bad guy with it. He wore an opera cape and he was a vampire. So they were easy, maybe that's why they're all dead.
Alright, so we have come to the question portion of our panel. Hand raising usually is the best way, so I go to lecture mode. You were first over here. Yeah.
So we just got done talking about like how we don't want vampires that are like sit on our left couch like woe is me, the world is boring, blah blah blah, fighting for whatever. So what are your thoughts on casting a creature, right? So like a normal dude who's a vampire, he's been alive for like 120 years, he's like, dude, I've done everything in my normal person's brain to think he can do. I'm super bored. Like now what? So he's not some fantastic like mega hot dude, he's not ultra rich, he's just like a guy that happened to become a vampire. He's like, man, I'm immortal. But then also he lives his 120-year life and he's like, shit, I've done like everything that I want to do.
Well, I would think casting, and I mostly, I know more about the show, I haven't read too much of the comics.
They're super simple, they're basically
Okay, so I think Cascade is actually a really interesting example of what happens when you've kind of done everything that you wanted to do. And he sort of finds this person who is an agent of chaos, which is Jesse Custer. And he kind of latches onto Jesse. I mean, he likes the dude, they get along. But he realizes that it's never going to be boring around Jesse. And I actually think that was a really interesting thing to do with the vampire. I mean, he's not as his superpowers are so lame for Cassidy, right? He has them, but they're kind of and so what he does to stay entertained and to have something to do and to get invested is he sort of latches onto this person who will never be boring, and I really like that.
It's a great question. I'm not going to answer with regards to Cassidy. Anybody read Elizabeth Kostova, The Historian?
Yeah.
Because that Dracula obviously is doing something similar with his mind. He is reading everything he possibly can get, amassing this amazing library of knowledge. Now, what he's going to do with that, which is where you're going, I really don't know. But I think that's a really good answer. Because if you've got an immortal soul, an immortal body, what the heck's going on in the mind? And geez, if you turn it into something good, people are going to slam you. Go, we're making good vampires now. You can't do that, so it's got to be evil. But I think, there's shades of evil. It really is a great question, and something that the Lakeland writers sort of look into is what do you do with the mindset above the shoulders of an immortal creature? Possibilities are endless.
Well, even in the show, the originals, Klaus, he has that side of him where even though he's evil and he's one of the originals, he's been around since the beginning, he gets bored, he gets petulant, but he has his art. And as creators, I think it's interesting to see characters where the one good thing with them often is their art, and watching that art improve. And I've seen books and series where it might be that they're an amazing musician because they've had decades or centuries to perfect that. So I always think it's interesting when they turn to art rather than mayhem and violence and chaos. But sometimes those are also dualities within one character, and that's really interesting too. I think that there is definitely a risk for needing to break the monotony, even if you excel at.
I'm sorry, very quickly, I just want to mention this recommendation. If you haven't checked out the Greta Helsing series by Vivian Shaw, It's a wonderful series about Olson, who is now a modern day doctor to the dead, including vampires. And one of the things that she constantly worries about is vampires getting bored. Because when they get bored, they go into this sort of ennui and they become very listless and depressed. And so she, in that book, it's sort of treated as chronic depression. That she, as their doctor, is constantly on the lookout. So the first book is dreadful. It's very good.
It's like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. The vampire, and that's the lifespan of an immortal. He goes through the chaos, he goes through the disbelief, then he ends up coming to this sort of phase of nirvana where it's all about talking with people and dealing with the outside world of it. Say.
One of the fun things I think when creating a vampire character who is that long-lived is finding out why they are still interested, why they're still engaged. One of the characters in the Void City series, sorry to do that, Lord Phil, his whole thing is he finds new vampires, befriends them, is really nice to them because he's looking for interesting people. And they just don't realize that he's looking for interesting people so that he can get them close enough to him so that when he betrays them, they will hate him forever. And his thing is, oh yeah, I know you're going to try to kill me, and that's the whole reason. Have fun. Let me know how it goes.
That's really nice essentialist that has a lot of depth to his feelings, and so that's sort of questioning what the meaning of life is, and when he gets really depressed, will he drugs to I'm a psychologist, so like I like into psychology and ask psychological questions. Anywho, you over there. Yes, you.
I was wondering if you know any Greek vampire lore?
Something about vampire lore.
Greek vampire lore.
Well, if you want to look up Greek vampire lore, I recommend either asking Sherilyn Canyon or just reading her books, because that's basically all she does. That's Greek vampires. Greek variations on vampires, although you might want to start with her earlier books, because right now I can't even tell what she did. It's like, okay, there's vampires and, gods, and okay, how many types of demons do you have now? I've lost track. Then again, she's probably still using Greek mythology. I can't track that flowchart either.
I don't know anything about it.
No, I don't know any particular ones, but I do know it's a part of the world where they, back in the 1700s, there was, a lot of activity going on that people believed was either werewolves or vampires. So it's based on people really believing that's how it's going on.
Well, if you want to know what I know about Greek vampire lore, Tom will be up later this evening sometime.
Next question. Oh, sorry, behind you.
Okay, so in terms of metamorphosis for your vampires, say if you're watching Hellsing or Hellsing Ultimate and how they have to use virgins to transform into vampires, are there any other type of trophy ideas that you prefer rather than using that whole, oh, you have to be a virgin to turn into a vampire?
I'm sorry, I guess I don't understand the question.
Are there different acts, instead of just saying, oh, you have to be a virgin to be a vampire, are there different ways you prefer, you think that's an old and outdated sort of method to use in storytelling?
Oh, for turning people into vampires?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Now, our vampires actually are born. I mean, they have
Yeah.
sex and they're born, so that's how
So what's
we
your
don't do
method?
conversion.
What's your method of becoming a vampire?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't really have any virgins in my book. It felt weird to say that out loud. So I haven't really thought about that one way or the other. In my books, the vampire making process is sort of mysterious because both of the main characters, and it's in first person, are not vampires, and vampires really play it close to the vest. But honestly, I always pictured it as very similar to Buffy, not just because I love Buffy, but because that actually makes a lot of sense to me, the exchanging of fluids is a viral contagion thing.
Yeah.
I also used vampirism as a bloodborne condition, disease, your term. I went into, since I have a family of both philosophers on one side and healthcare specialists on the other, I went into microbiology and vampirism. So it's, okay, if you get bitten, there's enough vampire disease in the saliva to keep keep the stock going well. You know, they'll heal faster for a little bit, maybe be a bit stronger. If you give the humans a little bit of blood, you know, about much, they become good minions and they become stronger. I don't go full Renfield with bug eating, but I do refer to them as Renfield anyway. And then, okay, after the first few ounces of blood exchange given from a vampire to a human, then they become one of us. But no, that's how I go about it. I've actually never heard of you must be a virgin to become a vampire. I know Helsing exists, but that's about it. That's the one with the guy in the red outfit, right?
Yeah. The most prevalent method in my books is using a form of necromancy, and I have a theory in my books that the undead have this special connection with necromancy, and they can also use it if they are old enough and powerful enough to create ghouls, and the ghouls act as their minions, and they basically eat their table scraps because the vampires feed off the blood, but the ghouls actually need to feed on the carrion.
We have I have the several different ways. One being the more typical fluid exchange. My favorite, I think, because it produces the most unpredictable results, is there are a few vampires who don't know they're going to become vampires because of the Courtney family curse, and in that one, because of the idiot who instigated it. If you're not quote unquote right with God, you become a vampire when you die, which has worked well until my main character screws it up and isn't quote unquote right with God. But because the curse has to, based on how you die, find a way to make you a vampire. So say you were decapitated and your body sent one place and your head another, then you might become a Nukakube, even though you don't know what one is. So it lets me introduce some fun vampires that don't really make regional sense, if that makes sense.
I'll just quickly add, isn't it great that my great-granduncle Bram didn't make one of those rules that was hard and fast, so that we can all do this sort of stuff with it. He had a number of brothers who were doctors and uncles who were doctors, and for whatever reason, science at the time wasn't specific about all this microbiology. So it was left that, you know, we had Lucy that was drained a number of times. She finally died, she became a vampire, but Mina obviously had some blood exchange, and she slowly was being converted. So I just say, thank God he wasn't definite, didn't have enough science, otherwise we'd be handcuffed a little bit and have to create our own law.
Okay, so we have time for one really quick question.
I would say, speaking of combat, stand for folklore and alternate history, two book series I really enjoyed, I got back from that history in the early 90s was Chris Godin's PR series, and Kim Newman's also Minority Draft History. I know many of y'all are aware of those and have read those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've read Kim Newman.